Imagine that you've just made a reservation at your favorite 5-star restaurant. Or if that sounds a little unrealistic or out of your price budget, imagine that you were gifted a gift card and then you made that reservation. You walk in excited for a night of great conversation, amazing food, and a great ambiance of an experience. You walk in and you're immediately captivated by a violinist playing in the corner and an aroma of breadsticks as you walk by. You're seated down at your table and you notice the white linen cloth that's covering it, and a server comes by to take your drink order. A few moments later, as you're sipping on your drink of choice, another waiter comes by to scrape off the little breadcrumbs from the table. Then later, after you have enjoyed a scrumptious steak and potatoes dinner, the other waiter comes by to hand you your check to pay for your meal. What you'll notice about this situation is that there were consistently two moving parts throughout it all: the consumer and the creators. You came for dinner excited for a night, and you received amazing service, a talented violinist performance, and an amazing meal of food from a talented chef. You came and you consumed from others who created. And our world is a constant loop of this creator-consumer cycle. So the question today is, what role do you have to play in that, and how are you supposed to find purpose within it? Well, we were all born to be creators. Think back to when you were in kindergarten and you were asked what you wanted to be when you grew up. What were some of the words that you said? An astronaut, a ballerina, a chef, a dragon slayer, an underwater welder. The list could go on. For me, I wanted to be an artist, but I had no artistic background to back that up, very little talent to defend why that was. I just knew that's what I wanted to be. I envisioned myself with a palette in hand in a little city studio apartment and paint splattered overalls. Today, I work in HR. So while I didn't end up as an artist by trade, I still think back to those roots, and it's very entertaining to think about. But the reality is that when you are a child, you have this full imagination of wonder, where you can be anything. The world is open, limitless, and full of so much potential. Then as you grow up, you are faced by consumerism that starts to infiltrate your life as the world we see it today. You watch commercials that show toys and games that you have to have and ask for every Christmas. You look in stores and you might open through magazines where you can see exactly what products you need to look like your favorite celebrities. And then you get your first phone and you are opened up into a life that starts of comparison and constant consumerism. It's no surprise then that that imaginative mind starts to get pushed out by all this consumerism coming at you. The average person sees roughly between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements a day. And a lot of that may happen through things you're familiar with, like the Spotify free ads or website visual ads, even billboards as you're driving to work or school. But a lot of these ads are ones that you don't even understand that are coming through your phone. You may just be scrolling through on your morning as you're drinking your coffee or getting ready to go to class, and you're watching your favorite influencer drink their morning coffee. Maybe you watch a thrifter go through a wardrobe haul, or you're watching a friend that you know who is talking about how they budget as a college student. What you may not realize is that a lot of these end up being sponsored without even realizing it. Sometimes you can't even tell. What was living stories of people are now advertisements to buy a specific coffee brand or a specific clothing brand or even a budgeting app. It's in almost every video that you may come across, especially if you're scrolling through TikTok or the public Instagrams of the world. And what happens is you are constantly filling your mind with this consumerism that you're watching, not only their lives and filling it with their lives, but also with products that you never asked for. So as you grow up in this world of consumerism, that imaginative spirit of full of potential life slowly gets pushed down by telling you what you should be, what you need to have, and who you will become. But the reality is that there's still a creator inside all of us. Now, when you hear the word create, do words such as art, paint, color, those types of words come to your mind? because that's what came to my mind when I first looked into creativity, creator. But create actually means to bring into existence. It just means that you're bringing something new into a space that wasn't there before. And while that can be art, it can be a technical trade or something that you are building or creating, it's really just anything that comes into existence. And the biggest form of creativity is actually your imagination. And I'm not just talking about fairy tales or images of a pirate storming an island for buried treasure, but I'm talking about the things that your mind does every single day without even realizing it. Have you ever felt nervous for a first date, a job interview, or even a doctor's appointment? If you've ever gone through that day, have you created versions of that day that were the worst case scenario that it could go possibly wrong? Maybe on your first date with this person you've never met, they end up having a weird obsession with their ex who looks exactly like you, and that's the whole conversation. Or maybe in your job interview, all of the questions end up being about the one task that you had no experience in. Or my personal favorite, which I do very often, you create about 4 different medical phenomenons that you are dying from before you ever walk into the doctor's office. The reality is, if you have done this, you have created versions of a day that never existed. They weren't there, they didn't happen, but you created them, even if they were terrifying, negative, or completely absurd. You created with your imagination. You brought something to life that wasn't there because you're a creator. And when you start viewing yourself as a creator, your life begins to change. You start to see the world not as something that you're constantly consuming from, feeling weighed down from, feeling like you're just going day to day in your life. But you start to see it as an empty oasis, a blank canvas that you get to leave your mark on, and you get to find your purpose in. When you start to think this way, your life can change, and it can change in lots of different ways. Think back to some of your proudest moments in your life. For some, maybe this was graduating high school. Maybe it was killing a class presentation or your capstone seminar. Or maybe it was earning a job promotion at your very first job. In any of these situations, it probably is so meaningful because you had to create something. You had to go beyond what was required and what was consuming of information to go out and do something significant. You had to work really hard. You had to put in a lot of work. There weren't easy answers, but you did it. You accomplished something, it was noticed, remembered, and it's now something that you refer back to as being proud of. And that's because when you create something, it gives you a new level of significance and purpose that goes far beyond just the everyday satisfaction of life. It fills you with that because you gave a piece of yourself into that. You were building onto it, and you were working towards creating that. For me, when I came to college, I didn't just join a club. As many of us can probably relate to, I joined the leadership team of that club, and we were faced with a lot of challenging decisions. Like, how do you create engagement across a club in the midst of COVID when everyone's remote and tired of screens? And what we did in that situation is we created a virtual fast food formal event where everybody came dressed up in formal attire on Zoom. They got their fast food meals to go, and we had an evening of fast food themed virtual games. And it went really well, and it was a great creative new way to bring everyone together in something different than what we had been doing. Later on in college, when I got to my major classes, and I took the one and only HR class of my major, and I realized that was what I wanted to do, but that was the only class. I decided to create an independent study afterwards with my professor so that I could keep the passion, the learning, and the research going. And without even realizing it, that pooled into my life after I graduated, and I got my first job. I got hired as an office manager, and a lot of the tasks included things like answering the phone, checking the mail, sending invoices to customers, and running payroll for our employees. A lot of administrative, heavy-based tasks. And while very excited for this opportunity and a new job out of college, I knew that I was going to need something bigger. I knew that I was going to need something with more purpose for me to really feel fulfilled. So without realizing it and without really thinking too hard about it, I just looked around and I spent some time thinking about, what is this organization missing? What could make this company better? What could I contribute or create? And what I saw was that this company did not have a strong HR department. It didn't have any department for HR. And so I decided I was going to create it. And I've spent the last year and a half since graduation doing just that. We now have a functioning, working onboarding system and new or hire orientation. We have a consistent employee check-in system to increase engagement among our employees, both remote and in person. And we've just relayed and outlined a new performance evaluation timeline for things that just didn't exist before I came here. And imagine how much better this world could be if we all just took a few moments instead of consuming to create something new, to add to the conversation in the company and the policies and the practices and the ideas of this world, besides just consuming them. That's where I found my purpose, and that's where I feel it and get it every day. It doesn't matter if the situation's great, if the job is great, if where you are is great, but it's how you take that moment to create and add something to the conversation of that time. Now, in order to see that creativity and open the space for creation, you have to push out some of that consumerism, because that is what originally has pushed out the creation. And this is hard. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of intentional practice to do. But once you do that, you open the door to what this creator inside of you can be. For me, the biggest thing for that was creating time and margin in my schedule to allow creativity. I think that every successful business or organization should take at least a day to just vision cast. Open the opportunity for innovative spontaneity, for things to come up just because they can. You don't have to think through everything, you don't have to plan it all out, but allow for ideas to arise. What could we do? What do we need? What could make it better? What passions of the people here could bring to this conversation? For others, it's choosing to talk to people, to hear about their lives and experiences instead of consuming them online. Meet up with people, see how they're doing, what do they need, what could help them. And then for others, it's going to events like this where you are consuming things, but taking it with you to do something. What are you going to do with the information you learn? What are you going to do with the reading that you did? What will you do with the class assignment you had to do? Taking it a step further to not just be consuming, but using that consumption to create allows you to find that deeper purpose and come out of situations finding that significance. Now, we all have to consume in life. We have to eat, we have to work, we have to take care of other people. Just like that constant loop, you trade places of being the creator and being the consumer. But it matters to understand how often that can happen. And what if you just took a few moments in that consumption that you have to consume to add a little bit of creativity to it? What if for one dinner, you and your friend group or your family made a new creative recipe just for fun? It didn't have to be the best world's recipe. It didn't have to be for someone else. You just did it for fun. You looked at the ingredients in your house before going to the grocery store and thought, what could we do with this? What if instead of just assigning chores to your children or maybe your apartment suite, you created a game out of it, or even a competition to get incentivized to do those things? And what if instead of the next time you found a problem in your club or your company, rather than first complaining about it, what if you thought about how you could help the situation? What you could bring to the conversation, what you could create, even if it seemed crazy, even if it didn't make a lot of sense, just thought through those things. When you start to add little moments of creativity into your life, your world opens up, and you find that it's a more purpose-filled experience that you get to go through and inspire others, and the world gets to see your creations. So my challenge for you today is to not only start viewing yourself as a creator, but to find those little moments in the world where you can choose creation in the growing world of consumption. And that is where I believe you'll find your greatest purpose through it all. Thank you.